Good evening, everyone. The February 27th, 2025 meeting of the Board of Directors will now come to order. Before we begin roll call, please note anyone who wishes to speak during the public comment session should sign up on the clipboard that's at the rostrum. Once I collect the clipboard, there'll be no more names added. So I think with that, we can go to roll call.
Present.
Present. Present.
Present.
Here.
Present.
Here.
Here.
Present.
Okay, we will, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, so for the first time ever, it's time to do adjustments to the agenda. I don't think we had any except for some new exhibits.
Yeah, Jim provided some new exhibits for the Region 10 Technical High School Committee update. So just an
Okay,
exhibit for that.
do, I guess, then make a motion to add those exhibits, or I don't
So
even know.
moved, why not?
Moved and seconded. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Then the next thing is 3.2, but before I ask for comments, I'm going to read a statement addressing the current investigation of the boys' high school hockey teams. Hopefully, maybe I'll get some answers for you before we take comment. As the investigation was initiated based on some very serious allegations about the misconduct in the hockey program that came to the district's attention. As I have said repeatedly, I'm not going to comment on the specific nature of the allegations out of respect for the ongoing process and for the confidentiality of all involved. Honestly, even if I wanted to, I couldn't. I don't know the details. We don't know the details. We haven't seen the report. We're waiting for it as much as any of you are. As board chair, I was kept informed of the process, but not about the details. However, based on the serious nature of the allegations, the district was required by federal law and Maine law and our policies to conduct an investigation. One of the laws governing the investigation is Title IX, federal law that prohibits sex discrimination. And I'm going to give a little bit of the history on Title IX. Our investigation began January 6th, 2025. On that day, the 2024, call it version of Title IX was in effect. On January 9th, 3 days later, a federal court vacated the 2024 federal rule, meaning that we would revert back to the most recent, before that version of the policy from 2020, which we have been calling 2020 Title IX. We have a policy, ACAA 2020. That policy, Title IX has been in effect for over 50 years, but that policy was changed a number of times. And in 2020, there were changes made to the policy that added more process, in fact, increased the length of the investigation. And most observers agree, most lawyers agree that that rule, it's been widely interpreted that the changes were made to allow more due process for the accused. In any event, we have determined with our lawyer, and I think it's pretty universally accepted, we are now living under the 2020 version of Title IX. We've been conducting this investigation under the 2020 version of Title IX. So the investigation's ongoing. It's addressing alleged violations of a number of different school policies. In addition to Title IX, we have board policies that prohibit hazing, bullying, and harassment. And the district's investigation will result in finding under all those policies. Since January 6th, we have engaged an outside investigator to run this investigation. The investigator has completed 38 interviews and transcribed all those interviews. That process took 4 weeks. As required by the federal law and our policies, the investigator then compiled all the evidence and record and provided it to the parties for their review and comment. By law, they're allowed 10 calendar days to comment on that. The investigator then takes all the parties' comments into consideration before completing an investigation report. That report has been provided to the parties. We are now in a second 10-day calendar day period where the parties can submit comments. Once the comments come back, then the report will be finalized. At that point, the report goes to a decision maker. Under our policy, that could either be the superintendent or someone she designates. Throughout this process, our superintendent's commitment has been to have the district conduct a fair and thorough investigation, and in continuing that, she has elected to designate a highly experienced outside decision maker to review the report and make decisions. Once the parties have been notified of the identity of that person, we will be able to share that name publicly. We don't have it today, but soon. That's where we are today. The investigative report has been shared. We are in the 10-day period. The next step will be to turn all that over to an independent decision maker. Once that decision maker gets the report, the parties will all be given an opportunity to submit written questions to be asked of the other parties by the decision maker. Then each party must be provided the opportunity to review the responses and ask limited follow-up. Only then will the decision maker review the report, all the relative materials, and issue a determination, a decision. The findings will also include consequences, if any. There is also an appeals process that any party may participate in. That's all pursuant to the federal Title IX law. I'm sharing this because I understand you're frustrated. I understand people would like answers faster, but we're required to follow this process, and there's really, that's where we are. I regret the season was canceled. I supported and understood the decision. Each step that the superintendent made, she could have canceled the season back in January, but she tried to keep it going for the kids to play hockey, but it reached a point where continuing the season was too divisive and she had to end it. I know you're frustrated. I ask for your patience. It's tempting to speculate and make assumptions, but we're all going to have to wait for the facts, and that includes everybody on this board. So with that, we'll move to public comment. And before we start that, I want to remind you that public comment is governed by policy BEDH, which has been written to comply with the state law. Specifically, all speakers should begin their comments with their name and town of residence. All comments are addressed to me, the chair. You're not permitted to share gossip, make defamatory comments, use abusive language or vulgar language, or make personal attacks. You cannot make complaints or allegations about a specific student. There's no discussion of personnel matters. In fact, a recent ruling by a Maine judge says you can't say anything positive or negative about any staff member, including the superintendent, coaches, teachers, and that's it. I expect everybody will remain civil, and I will call the first person. 2 names. Andrea Cram.
My name is Andrea Cram. I'm a resident of Bowdoin and a mother of a player on the MTA boys hockey team. I am here tonight because I am deeply disappointed in how the cancellation of the season happened. Instead of addressing the repeated misconduct of the interim coaches who were appointed by this board, the blame has been placed on 6 parents wearing T-shirts, players wearing stickers on their helmets, and accusations of bullying based on one-sided information. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time this has happened. And let me be clear, there was no malicious intent on senior night. Players and parents wore the number of a senior whose season was unjustly taken from him to show support on a night that should have been his. He was denied participation, and they simply acknowledged that loss. I am asking you to do the right thing and retract the statements that were issued to hockey families on February 16th, and then to the entire community, including every high school and middle school student, February 17th. These players have endured more mental and emotional stress this season than any teenager should have to bear. They should not be made scapegoats for the cancellation of their season. How does placing that blame protect their safety, well-being, and integrity? The truth is it doesn't. Nothing they did created an unsafe environment. The real failure was allowing a clearly emotional player to take the ice, a decision made by the coaching staff that directly led to the unsafe situation. This was not the first time that failure has occurred, but because in that game, it didn't result in a fight on the ice, it was ignored. What no one seems to be willing to address is the true cause of the division within this team and the families. Players and coaches were suspended based solely on accusations alone. Yet when accusations surfaced against another player, that player was allowed to continue playing as though nothing had happened. This blatant inconsistency in the injustice that players, parents, and supporters have been speaking out against. By removing one player while protecting another, that is what created the highly charged and divisive environment that ultimately led to this season's downfall. This was never about accusations themselves. It was about the glaring disparity in how this entire situation has been handled from the very beginning. I stand here tonight because I have been targeted for speaking out against this injustice without ever hearing my reasons for doing so. My workplace has been contacted 3 times by the grandfather of an alleged victim, most recently questioning my moral character and the ability to work safely with children. Let me be clear, advocating for and against injustice is not condoning bad behavior. It is demanding fairness. Regardless of the investigation's outcome, policies must be applied consistently. Either accusations alone are enough to remove a player or a coach from a team, or no one should be removed without clear and compelling evidence. The lack of fair and uniform process has set a dangerous precedent, one that allows an athlete's season, a coach's career, and an entire program to be derailed before the truth is even known. Worse, it sends the message that making accusations first shields you from being held accountable for any accusations made against you, and that is unacceptable. It is easy to hide behind policy when you're not personally affected, but I am affected. The hockey teams and 8 coaches have been affected, and that is why I'm standing here tonight. Speaking out is not enough. Action is needed. This cannot happen to another player, another coach, or another team. Policies must be revised to ensure that no athlete loses an entire season based on unproven accusations, and no coach's reputation should be destroyed without due process. If a player or a coach is to be removed, there must be clear evidence, not just allegations. I urge you to take immediate steps to prevent this from happening again. Conversations spark change, but action creates solutions, and the time for action is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason McDonald. You've decided, okay. Okay. Well, that concludes public comment. Thank you. We will move to recognitions and acknowledgements. Wake up my computer here. Okay. First thing here is to recognition and acknowledgement of a donation of $500 from former Monterey Middle School staff member Dave Sargent and his family to support sixth grade students on Team South Bay, and in accordance with board policy, to consider action to accept the donation.
So moved?
Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? Hudson?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. 3.3.2, recognition and acknowledgement of the donation of a 3D printer from Dave Perloff of the Perloff Foundation for the middle school STEM program, with a donation valued at $267.
So moved?
Second.
Moved by Hudson, seconded by Mary. Any comments?
Thank you again.
Thank you again. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, 3.3.3, recognition and acknowledgement of a receipt of a $3,832 grant from seed money to support the school garden at Bodenham Community School, and in accordance with board policy, to consider action to accept this donation.
So moved.
Moved by Frank, seconded by Mary. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. We are now on to board announcements and correspondence. I do have something I want to say here. Board correspondence is a standing section of our agenda. We rarely have anything on it. That isn't to say we don't get a lot of correspondence. We do. We routinely receive letters from the community about things on the agenda or other things happening in the district. And I want everyone to be assured that we read them, we consider them, and we use them to inform our decisions. I do want to mention tonight 2 letters we specifically received. They're not being publicly shared because they contain confidential information, including information that identifies or could be reasonably used to identify specific students. I do want to acknowledge that we received a letter from Coach Eric Baker and a letter from Coach David Brooks, both of the interim volunteer hockey coaches. First, I'd like to reiterate my thanks for their willingness to step up to try and help us keep the season going. There was no reward for them, financial or otherwise. They just wanted to help the kids. Both of these letters, the coaches expressed their appreciation for the opportunity to coach MTA hockey. And separately, they both expressed sincere regret for how the season ended and acknowledged their own loss of composure and use of inappropriate language on the night of February 15th, senior night. So I thought it was important to acknowledge that to the public and for me to express my appreciation for their forthright letters. Anyone have any comments or questions? Okay, we will move on to hear a report from our student representative.
I just have a few school updates to talk about. First of all, next weekend is the production of our school musical, Mamma Mia. There's going to be a show at 7:30 on Friday night, and then 2 matinees on Saturday and Sunday at 2 p.m. As for the class of 2025, my senior class, we are in the midst of planning for prom. The date is May 10th at Lamont Hall in Brunswick, and we've been collaborating with our parent committee on decorations and order forms, and they are also secretly planning our project graduation as well. And then finally, the girls basketball team is going to be playing in the state championship game tomorrow. So to our community, we would like a lot of support at the Augusta Civic Center at 6:05 p.m. tomorrow.
Hey, go Eagles.
That's it.
Thank you. Item 4, to consider action relative to accepting as printed the minutes of the January 23rd regular meeting of the Board of Directors.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Frank, seconded by Hudson.
Oh,
Hudson?
That
Scratch that, scratch that.
was funny.
Any comments? No comments? All those in favor? Those are approved unanimously. Thank you. Oh, boy, maybe you should change seats. We will move to old business. 5.1, to consider a second reading / adoption of the proposed revisions to policy BCA, Board Member Code of Ethics.
So moved?
Second?
Moved by Hudson, seconded by Frank. I'll let Hudson tell us about this policy.
Yeah, we brought it in a month ago now because of our cancellation of our previous meeting. For a second read, no changes were made following the first read. This is predominantly a revision to allow us to just have some expectations in place regarding the way we use devices during meetings. That's it.
Any comments or questions? Seeing none. Oh, yes, Jessica.
Sorry, you guys moved really quickly there, and I was catching up online here, the meeting minutes or the meeting notes. This is the board member code of ethics.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did have one question.
Okay.
You're going to get sick of me saying this once or twice. And if nobody else is interested in this, it's fine. It's semantics at the end of the day, but words matter. So I would love to see all of our policies eventually say student instead of child.
Which,
Universally throughout the.
which, are there specific bullets where you saw that?
Oh, I didn't write that
It's in
down.
the top,
Hudson.
I'm jumping in here.
Please.
I see where it is, Jessica, I think it's in the top, Hudson, at the, before the
Yep.
bullets.
In the
Provide a
preamble?
quality education to all the children of MSAD 75, as opposed to saying all the students.
Thank
of-
you, Kim.
Yeah. It may be elsewhere. It's in bullet B as
Yeah,
well.
bullet F.
Find and replace.
So
I think it's a
If other
great
people
suggestion. I think
are
it's a great
in favor of
suggestion.
that.
I have no problem.
So, we can't do it for all the policies, but we
Right.
can
This one's being
go
looked
ahead
at.
and agree that we'll
Yes.
do it in this policy. Um,
Yeah, I will do that before submitting it to Nick tomorrow.
With
Thank-
that edit, are there any other questions?
Do we need to consider that as an amendment per se, or? Sorry,
You stumped me.
Are you moving to amend the motion?
I'm happy to
Yep.
move to amend the draft to replace children with student or students whenever necessary.
Okay, so we'll first need a second on the amendment.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Holly. Kim made the amendment, Holly seconded. So we're voting to replace child with student. So all those in favor? That's unanimous. And now
The
we-
Damon amendment, I just want to give credit where
The
credit.
Damon amendment. And now we had already moved and seconded the policy. So if there are no other comments, I think we're ready to vote on the second read. No comments? All those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. Next, to consider a second reading and adoption of proposed revisions to policy GCFB, recruiting and hiring of administrative staff.
Seconded.
Moved by Frank, seconded by husband.
Oh,
I did it again. Oh,
hope Becky
man. Now we're gonna have to, okay.
You're
Yes,
gonna have to
moved
do a
and
lot of
seconded. It's
apologize.
been moved and seconded. Any comments?
Yes, I'll
Yes.
just introduce again and just sort of say, this is second read, no changes were made from the first read. This is just an update that the superintendent requested.
Any comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Moving on to 5.3, to consider approval of proposed amendments to procedure GCFBR, the recruiting and hiring of administrative staff procedures that goes along with the policy we just approved.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Hudson, is there anything you want to tell us about this one?
So you haven't seen this yet, but just like the policy that it goes with, this is based on some adjustments requested by the superintendent. Nothing too complicated.
Anyone have any questions about that one? Okay. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. 5.3. Nope, 5.4. To consider a second reading and adoption of proposed revisions to policy IIB, which is guidelines for class size and teacher-student ratios. Now, we had some discussion about this the first time around. So Hudson, you want
So
to?
moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Yeah, so prior to this coming to a first read, we sort of pulled it back quickly because we had some good feedback from Frank that was important for us to incorporate regarding some preschool stuff. We addressed that until we brought it to you for first read. So yeah, this came out of a multi-step review that happened in the policy committee with Heidi's guidance about do we need to adjust these, how would we need to do them. What we ended up doing was trying to bring some consistency to the way that we do class sizes across all schools in the district, elementary, middle, and high school, as well as to include pre-K, since we do have pre-K classrooms now. So that's sort of the work that came into this. We did not make any radical changes to the class size guidelines. They are broadly in line with what they were before, some being fleshed out a little differently, but that's sort of where we landed.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns or comments about the class size? This will be important going forward as we.
In keeping with the discussion we just had, there's an occurrence of children in here. And if folks were persuaded before, I might suggest it's at the end of the first sentence. That you make the same substitution to students or its students.
We'll consider that a motion. Jim?
And might I suggest that in this specific case, because the word students is used before it, so that it's not just of those students, replace children with those students. That direct teacher contact with students contributes to the educational growth of those students.
So consider that a motion to amend,
Motion to amend.
Second.
seconded by Kim. Any comments? All those in favor? Okay, the amendment passes unanimously. Now back to the policy. Any questions or comments further on that? All right, all those in favor? That also passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, 5.6, to consider a second reading and.
5.5.
Oh, yeah, you, I am.
Have a husband.
That's my board husband. To consider a second reading and adoption of the proposed revisions. I don't know if I like this on board thing. Revisions to the policy JICC or conduct on school buses or other district provided transportation.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Hudson.
So yeah, this is, again, you've seen it before, it's second read. We took EEAB, included some language from the MSMA sample for JICC, and sort of created a revised policy that's a little more modernized. The policy committee did want to note that this is something we might expect to see further updates dependent upon any new guidance from the board on the use of personal devices such as phones. So this could get updated on the sooner side. This is not we're doing it and maybe in 5 years we'll look at it again. We might look at this sooner, but we felt it was important to get the current revisions in place just to help modernize in the meantime.
Anybody have any questions or concerns or word changes? Jessica?
Naturally, there's one more child here in the second paragraph, which you might actually understand because we're talking about the parents there, but I'll leave that up to you. It says district provided transportation in the morning and after the child leaves the bus or other district provided transportation. But right before that, we reference the student. And I think the rest of the document references student. So if you are all amenable, I would propose a change child to student there.
Are you making a motion?
I am making a motion
Okay. Do
to
we have,
change child to student in the second paragraph.
do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kim. Any Comments, questions? Okay, let's vote on the amendment. All those in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. Back to the policy. Any further comments or questions? Okay, let's vote. All those in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. Good work, policy committee, you're just cranking them out. Now we will consider a second reading and adoption of a proposed school calendar for 25-26, and it looks like Dr. Hersey's gonna give us a presentation.
Yes, I can speak to this. You have seen this calendar once, and I'll go through the changes since you first saw that. The changes are that graduation was moved from June 7th to June 14th. And the trimester and quarter end dates were added. So at this time, this is a complete calendar for your review, and had no changes to the start of school, the workshop days, or vacation days.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Hudson?
Are we still in perfect alignment with the other districts for Region 10? I feel like the first time there were no different days, right?
I believe we are, yes, we are within our 5 days.
Yeah.
There was a change, I believe, with the Freeport calendar that we are 2 days dissimilar, but that's within we're good to go.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm ready to vote on the calendar. All those in favor? Nope.
I make a motion that we approve the calendar as written.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Graduation is June 14th, 2026. Well, more than the 7th did. Next, we were going to hear a report from Chris Hoffman and Corey Calderwood on the STEM night held January 30th.
We do have some images if folks right here want to swing around, that probably will be more comfortable for you.
No.
Hello. Okay. Nick, are we okay? Still open. All right, so we were asked to share a little bit of information about the STEM night we held here at Mount Arad High School on January 30th. Myself and Corey Calderwood, our STEM outreach teacher, are here to share a little bit about the event with you all. Thank you for your attention. I'll sort of start from the beginning. What we're showing you right now is just a projection of the website that we created to both promote the event and share information about it for attendees. But stepping way back, where this all came from is that over the course of this year, we, beginning last spring, joined a multi-district collaboration through the Maine Mathematics and Science Alliance, MMSA, for their STEM Workforce Ready project, essentially bringing districts together to share resources, lesson ideas and plans, and other information to promote STEM and STEM career readiness across our state, specific to computer science, but also to other aspects of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It was really Corey who initiated our membership into that group. And so we began our planning for this event only as a function of being a part of the MMSA Workforce Ready group. Corey and I began our direct experience with that by attending a multi-day conference at the Schoodic Institute in August, where we initially had the idea that for our event, all districts that are members are expected to put on an event of some kind that promotes STEM and also invites educators from our region to participate in those activities. And we decided that we wanted to do the event that became STEM Night. Or you want to share any more about that fruition?
Yeah, it was our kind of our big idea. We were tasked with coming up with a big idea and we were like, what if we did this? And particularly we're in a unique, exciting, dynamic community filled, surrounded by STEM businesses that are actively engaged in innovation and STEM technology. And so we thought it was an amazing opportunity to bring those businesses to our school. And it started as an idea of primarily a career fair as a way for our high school students to interact with potential businesses that they could be employed with post graduation. And as we started to plan, we realized it could have a bigger scope. And so we expanded the idea to then include all grades and the full community, and it became an opportunity to showcase some student work that we've been doing in the high school, and we brought in the elementary with Woodside One-Wheelers. We had active teacher participation that we're offering workshops and hands-on activities throughout the evening, which was really exciting. I think we had 12 or 15 additional educators that night.
Yeah, and so we will just show you bits and pieces from the night through some photo images that took place. But I think fair to say we were not sure exactly what we were going to get in terms of participation, but we're very pleased in the end that nearly 400 people came for the event between 4 and 7. So we did share this website in advance, and you know, you're welcome to peruse it if you want to go back in time and see, but it just Corey's responsible for the design and largely all the pieces of it. I would say Corey, myself, Doug Ware, our community pathways coordinator, and then also Amanda and Nick had a role in helping us prepare for the night. So so I'm not going to go through all the website right now, but we'll just transition to show you some pictures of the different things that were included. So this was just our lobby upon entry. We had guests checking in right in our main lobby area, but pretty much this entire hallway into the dining commons, as you'll see, as well as classrooms, both upstairs and downstairs, hosted different activities. This is a picture from our dining commons. We do appreciate the help of our facilities team that cleared out all of our normal furniture to make way for this. where indeed we hosted between the dining commons and the lobby area. I think we had 15 different businesses and local organizations represented to talk about the career opportunities that they offer. And I would say, you know, this was early in the event, and I think it was probably about as sparsely attended as it ever was through the evening.
They stayed very, very busy throughout the night, and and not only did we have adults and high schoolers actively talking to these businesses, but it was really wonderful to see so many little children, young children, interested and actively involved. And the dining commons looked amazing. And it was just, the response from the businesses has been overwhelming of how positive and energizing and what an amazing opportunity they had to come to our school too. So.
Just a few examples of the different types of activities we included. This was a demonstration from the Topsom Fire Department in the function of, which I should say both the chemistry and the function of fire extinguishers. This is Elizabeth Reeves from the Topsom Fire Department, but little kids got to pull the trigger on fire extinguishers as well.
And that features our science maker space on the second floor.
This is a couple of overlapping photos from our downstairs makerspace where the hot tub, the pool lives during robotics season. You can see the pool in the lower left-hand corner of the bottom left photo. We had representatives from our underwater robotics team showcasing the different components of their underwater robot, which as a part of the sea perch competition, they use to maneuver through a challenge on competition day to achieve what the objective is. And lots of hands on deck to both see that robot as well as see the way that we manufacture and 3D print and otherwise manipulate to the design of the robot.
So we kind of had a robots and virtual and augmented reality corner in my classroom and the one next door. It was a fantastic opportunity for people to try out the Class VR headsets that we brought into the school the district last year through the grant. It was great fun. So it was set up as kind of a STEM playground. So there were multiple stations. This room was packed full of kids and adults playing and laughing. And what you kind of don't see here is at the same time, there's Lego robots behind and there's sphere robots going around the whole classroom at the same time. We had RC cars in the hallway. And then the second classroom behind us had the robots for the very little kids. So we had all ages playing nonstop for 3 hours straight. It was great fun.
Yeah, this is a couple of pictures of those RC cars. As we were planning for this event, lots of unexpected things happened, but one of those was that we were actually approached by a bunch of different students to say, hey, could I showcase the way that I tinker, the way that I play with different technologies? And so these were a couple of students who asked us actually if they could exhibit their passion, which is their RC cars. And so over the course of the night, there was lots of very fast buzzing of vehicles up and down the hallway. And I do think some other little kids who maybe hadn't played with RC cars in the past had the chance to see that and see some teenage kids really passionate about their work in that area. Yeah. This is another shot from our downstairs makerspace where we just had several of our 3D printers going throughout the night, showcasing the process of you know, how a 3D printer works, again, mostly for littler kids, but also for big ones. That's one of our high school students right there showcasing this. He's actively involved in an ongoing independent study with both 3D printing and laser engraving through our Community Pathways program.
Yeah, so we also highlighted our digital art through the AP art class. They have a fleet of iPads from the district technology department that put those iPads in the hands of our AP students. And they were in the Learning Commons that evening, both showcasing the art that they have created on that Promethean board, but then they were there for kids to start to create art using the iPads. So it's, again, very hands-on, very playful, a lot of interaction between students and teachers and other kids coming into the spaces. It was really a wonderful event.
And then this is a shot from inside the BIW mobile, I forget what they call it, the trailer that they bring around to showcase their use of technology and training and recruitment. So those of you that know my family well will recognize that that's actually my dad in the picture. He's a retired BIW employee of more than 30 years. And even as I'm almost turning 40, I can't get rid of my parents coming to school events of mine. Actually, he was responsible for daycare for my kids that night, so they came to STEM night. And in the BIW trailer are, again, lots of just different STEM activities that they use. One thing that BIW use and that I've been subjected to is they use those VR headsets now as a part of their training regime for different trades within the yard. So they will train their painters, for example, in the motion of painting the side of the ship using, what used to be they would actually use material in that training, and now they use VR to train painters. I encourage you to be careful if you are ever in this position before. What I was subjected to was that they had me put the VR headset on and then, showed me how to put the harness on as if I was going to go up on scaffolding. But then we did it for real. Of course, I forgot to put it on. They do this intentionally. And then in the VR headset, they had you take a step off and fall off of the scaffolding. So literally, I felt like I was falling 4 flights onto the ground. It's a trick that they use on many people, I think.
Yep. So this was in the robots room. Like I said, there was never a moment where there weren't kids playing with all of the robots all of the time. It was also quite lovely to see them actively teaching each other. So you had kids who didn't know each other, but were like, let me show you how to use it. So that was really wonderful too. There was a lot of connection between the elementary school students who came to the event and saying, oh, we have that in the Learning Commons. So it's important to know that a lot of this technology is available district-wide in our Learning Commons, and to see them start to make those connections and also see that it's still happening at the high school, I think was a really great part of the event as well.
So I think that's our last image, and we can wrap up by just saying that I think we're pleased with how things went. We definitely think there are some things we can improve. I think we didn't know what was going to happen and didn't know going into this, but I think we are interested in potentially pursuing this event again in the future. I guess it is important to quickly note that we're grateful to our membership in the WFR, the Maine Math and Science Alliance organization, and through that partnership, we had access to some grant funding from the Alfond organization. And we used that money to support some of the supplies necessary to put this event on, but also to provide concessions to folks who came to the event. I know some of you came, and I hope that you were able to get a bite to eat. That served as both a way to feed you and as a fundraiser for our athletic boosters. We're grateful to the support from the Harold Alfond Grant Association. And yeah, I hope we can pull it off again next year, I think. So we'll take any questions if you have them.
President, you mentioned the training trailer from BIW. There were two things that stood out to me. The reality, and I had met a fellow at a friend's house who works on that and described to me the way VR is being used in the real world. That's the critical piece. It's not someday, that's how the training is going on. But the complexity, I was trying to think about the programming because I did the welding. I've never welded. I have neighbors who weld if I need something welded. But it wasn't just looking at the picture. there was that haptic. I could feel the contact of the rod, which was touching nothing. But if you had not, it's like the AI work, that you've got to see the power of it. In this case, that trailer allowed you to feel it. I am glad I didn't put the belt on. It was wonderful. Well done.
Mary?
I was so impressed. It was really a fun night. But how did you get the different businesses? What was your process?
Not to a T, but largely those are businesses that we've developed relationships with through the Community Pathways program already. Not in all cases, but in some, we have placed students there for either short-term or longer-term internships or work-based studies or just as a part of some project. But we also benefited from, again, through the Community Pathways program, we have a good relationship now with Bath Brunswick Chamber of Commerce, and Corey King, the executive director there, helped us connect with some additional businesses to come exhibit.
And do you think that you had a full house? Like, do you see you could fit more in? Because there were some businesses that I know that I thought would be big in, but do you feel like you had enough, like you have a full house?
I think yes and no. I mean, I think yeah, I think one of the things we definitely considered was ways to think about our use of space and consolidate the spaces we use or make sure people made it to different areas. But I definitely think some of our teachers, one of the things that we didn't showcase was an owl pellet activity that we basically ran out of the supplies for that. And so in some ways, no, we probably couldn't have handled any more. I do know that, again, thank you to our athletic boosters for running the concession stand throughout the event. I think they were overly taxed in the sale of food through the concessions booth, and I wouldn't want to put too much more stress on them without planning for that. But in other ways, we could have handled more people still.
It was a very big success, I would say. So thank you.
Go ahead, Andy.
I had a great time. Brought my family by, and I never been able to play with so many toys all in one spot. So no, it was a great evening. So thank you for that.
Haley?
Don't make me a liar.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Definitely.
I think you're next. Oh. Do you want us to stay in our seats? I
Sure,
mean,
you
are
can
you
probably-
using the screen again?
I think we're gonna use the screen some more, so you can stay right in your seats. We didn't expect this. We didn't know this was gonna happen, but we had intentionally reached out to Charlie Crosby in advance of STEM night, and he had put us on the front page of the Crier back in early January. But he did it again. The Crier that just came out yesterday, we're on the front page there again for this event. So thank you to Charlie for that positive coverage. So totally transitioning away from STEM night and towards the report and recommendations of the Personal Technology Study Group, a different technology related topic. Thank you for your continued attention. And I'm going to try to be as concise as possible, but also being comprehensive in reporting out on the work of the Personal Technology Study Group, which I know you've gotten a few updates about over the course of the past couple of months since we formed in late November. But this is our, I won't quite say final report because we may yet have more work to do, but I think this is our comprehensive report of the work we've done. So to remind you of some things, in terms of the formation of this group, it was at the November 20th Policy Committee meeting where we discussed the creation of the Personal Technology Study Group. And I'll just make reference quickly to the stated board goal, your board goal from the beginning of the year was that we, in empowering students to have a healthy and productive relationship with technology so they can thrive and be present in the future, by August of 2025, the administration will explore the option of restricting access to cell phones during the school day. And that was one piece of our charge, was to help fulfill that goal for this year. And so it was at that group that we formed. I sent a community, or excuse me, Heidi sent a community-wide email on the 26th of November, inviting all members of our community to potentially participate. And in our formation, we hoped for a study group, a body of 12 to 18 people charged with learning all about cell phone and social media use, considering the role that devices and platforms play in young people's lives, and developing recommendations for our approach to such devices in our schools. And we held our first meeting on December 4th, and it was also at that time that we began to share resources. And I'll just showcase this to you, something that you'll have access to going forward. By no means did we read and actively discuss all of these different pieces, but our group together collectively shared between us and made reference to all the different resources, articles, and online websites that are listed on this resource page. So in terms of our membership, we had about 30 people express interest in the group. And some people came to maybe just one meeting that are not listed here, but we had a stable group of people. Anyone listed here came to at least 2 of our 5 meetings and may have contributed additionally to through email or other communications, but it included all the people listed here. A couple of those folks are here tonight. Dot Bowie is here. Danielle Hiltz is here. And then 2 board members with you, Jim Moulton and Jessica Damon, are also here, who joined the group. But it was a diverse mix of administrators, board members, parents. We had a couple of students participate, and those people are all here. In terms of our process, just a little bit about each of the meetings we held. And at our December 4th meeting, we reviewed a couple of current policies and procedures that the board has in place. We discussed one article and agreed that we wanted to conduct a community survey on the topic. At our December 19th meeting, we discussed an additional 2 articles and then spent the rest of our time developing that survey. At our January 8th meeting, we discussed both an article and a statement from a group of students in our school. And also finalized our survey questions. And then on January 29th meeting, we reviewed the survey data that had been collected following the distribution of that survey. I believe it was sent out on January 11th. And it was also between that January 8th and January 29th meeting that a cohort of 4 people from the larger group visited Morse High School to look into a system that Morse had in place. And then at our February 5th, our last meeting, we really honed the recommendations that we're going to make tonight and talk about tonight, as well as just discussed alternatives that I'll just make reference to as we go. Yeah, I mean, there were others who are not here. You know, Dot or Danielle, please feel free to chime in at any point if I miss something that you think is critical, and Jessica and Jim the same. So our overall recommendations are as follows. Our overarching recommendation is to promote phone-free school environments that will allow for greater social interaction and student independence. More specifically, our first recommendation is to update our policies and procedures to reflect an expectation that personal technology, including cell phones and smartwatches, not be allowed during the student school day. We did vote on that. The committee did vote on that, and of the membership there at that meeting, we unanimously supported it. There were some people who are part of our group who were not there at that meeting and probably would have not supported that idea, and I'll get to that. But our second recommendation is really that we support the development of more explicit student-to-student social opportunities during non-academic time in the school day. We want to fill the void created by phone-free environments with other opportunities for students to connect socially. And our third recommendation is that we really feel it's essential that we support ongoing family and community educational opportunities in personal technology use, both in school and outside of school. A little bit about the rationale behind these recommendations, which comes out of our discussions. Foremost, we'd like to free our students of the burden of phone access during the school day. And we'd like to fill that void with greater opportunity for socialization, peer-to-peer bonding, and peer adult interactions that are away from screens. And I want to just overall articulate that this is about more than just academic time. This is about more than just what happens from bell to bell within any one individual class. This is about the totality of the school experience throughout the school day. There are many, many opportunities for learning, social interaction, socialization, and so much more that aren't from the start of one class to the next, that are at lunch, that are between classes, that are at other moments in the day. And we believe that the positive aspect of a school experience that can come, we're only going to maximize that if students don't have access to personal technology during those times. We believe that access to phones tends to undermine that social interaction, as one article from Jonathan Haidt points out. And as one 11th grade student from elsewhere in the country notes, in a school that did remove personal technology access, just not having a phone, it takes this weight off of you. It almost sets you free in a way. And I think that's what we're interested in our schools too. So I'm not going to show you all of the survey results that we collected, but at various points we will make reference to some of the data from our community survey. What we know is that students are spending a lot of time on their phones all throughout the day, but including during the school day. And I think we have to ask, is that how we want them to be spending time during the school day? As I note in the bottom right-hand corner, according to one study from New York State, SUNY Stony Brook, that study estimates that in some schools where students have access to their phones, they might be spending as much as 1/4 of their school days on their phones. In terms of our own survey, this question asked students in total and for all purposes, how much time would you say you spend using your cell phone in a full day? And as you can see, again, this is student self-reported data, but 25% of students say they spend 1 to 2 hours in a day. Almost 30% of students say they spend 3 to 4 hours in a day on their phones. An additional 17.5% say they're spending 4 to 6 hours. And as you get into the purple, light blue, and pink, it's even more than that. That self-reported data certainly suggests students are on their phones a whole heck of a lot of the time. We believe, among other things, that the presence of phones in our schools is undermining student-teacher relationships. This is a staff survey question that asked, to what extent do you believe the enforcement of current cell phone practices, meaning in our current environment where teachers are really responsible for asking students to put them away, to what extent does that undermine positive relationships or making those relationships more challenging? And this was a district-wide survey, not just high school staff, but throughout the district. And as you can see, 54 staff members, or 40%, believe that it is having a profoundly negative impact on those relationships. We also think that both parents and staff see cell phones as a significant distraction during the school day. To the left, you have a parent survey question asking on a 1 to 5 scale, to what extent do you believe your child's access to a phone is or could be a distraction to their academic work during the school day? Again, the most common response, or 45.8% of parents, said a 5, the greatest extent. And among staff, similarly, more than half of staff respondents, 53.6%, suggest it is profoundly distracting. And in addition, parents and staff do not believe that students should have their phones in school. We asked parents, do you believe that your child should have unrestricted access to a smartphone during at least part of the school day? And nearly 70% of parents said no. We asked a separate question about specifically during academic time, and the response rate was even greater there. But this question was about at any point during the school day. and 70% of parents said no. And similarly, 71.5% of staff members said no. Just a couple of additional comments from our community survey that were validating or important to our rationale. One staff member writes, social media has such negative impacts on student ability to focus, learn, and interact with their peers. Students need our help learning how and when to fully put them away. It needs to not be seen as a punishment, but rather a support in teaching them how to safely use their phones and keep their developing brain growing. Our survey data, as well as the experience from students on our group, is that students do not necessarily see it this way. Our student survey data to the left-hand side, on a 1 to 5 scale, to what extent do you believe your phone is a distraction to you, to your academic work during the school day? As you can see, 77% or nearly that many percentage of students said they don't see it that way. They don't think of it as a distraction at all. And again, another student survey question on a 1 to 5 scale, do you believe that access to your phone is more of a distraction to learning or more of a positive resource to support such work and learning? As you can see, more students tended towards the more positive resource and support. And so our students, based on the data, don't see it the same way that the adults generally did. I will say that I think in terms of our group's work, our visit to Morse High School was particularly impactful. We heard over and over, we toured Morse High School, saw the beginning of their student day. Morse has a system where students are required to put their phones and smartwatches in a pouch throughout the day that is locked from the moment they walk in the doors of the building. We saw that process and also had a chance to meet with a group of staff and students from Morse to talk about their experience with this change this year. And I think over and over we heard the word game changer. During that visit at Morse and throughout RSU1, they've implemented this both at the high school and in their 2 middle schools. It was a profoundly affirming experience that school community believes this change has been a game changer. Some other considerations separate from our rationale. I think it's important to note that our group was not totally unanimous. Our students in particular had some really good questions and concerns. Shouldn't we, for example, be helping students to learn and manage their technology use to properly prepare us for our future? Shouldn't we be teaching that? And isn't having your access to your phone a part of being able to do that? Probably the most common argument we've heard from students. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I'll leave it there. I can offer a counter argument. I'm not going to do so right now. How can we manage essential communications with our own parents and from our coaches about our schedules? Again, a very good question and something that we'll need to think about if we move in this direction. I think it would be foolish to think that our community hasn't learned to rely on text communication for all manner of last-minute changes to schedules and other things. And lastly, my phone's a really useful tool that I use to help organize my academic and personal life. Again, fair enough, a very good point. I'm not necessarily here to refute these things, but I think our students raised some good points in our process. So I think given that, I do think we have a need for ongoing dialogue with our students, and we're scheduled to, we had a very brief conversation, as Lydia can share, at one student senate meeting, and we're planning to visit student senate alongside our Can We group that's been engaged in conversation around cell phone use. We have a conversation scheduled with them in mid-March to talk further about student perspectives on the issue. But the data does suggest there's a gulf of understanding between students and adults on this topic. And regardless of the specific solution that we end up landing on, I do think we need to help our students understand the approach that we take. And even if they are unhappy in the end, we want to make sure their voices are heard in the process. And among many other things, we really do need to capture the parent-student communication needs. As I said, I think parents and students, especially at the high school level, have become very accustomed to being able to text back and forth all the time, especially as it relates to communication needs, but also in support of one another. 98.5% of our community's parents cite communication with their own child as one of the top reasons that they purchase their child a phone. And again, that's data from our community survey. Our planning also needs to ensure a sense of safety and address the safety concerns that may exist in our community. One student wrote in our community survey that phones are also a comfort to me because of safety reasons. If there were ever an intruder in school, I feel better knowing I can communicate with my family about me being safe. And I think that's a sentiment that exists in our community for sure, as well as in others. We did reach out to law enforcement partners, both here in Topsom and in Saginaw County, and they both provided us with letters that really speak to the importance in crisis situations of, here's, for example, a letter from Chief Mark Hagan here in Topsom that talks about the potential value of restricting access to phones in emergency situations because it's so important that young people follow through on established protocols and be prepared to listen to adults and respond to those directions in such situations. And again, both Sheriff Joel Mary and Chief Hagan here in Topsom provided us with that perspective in those letters. So in terms of our next steps, based on our recommendation, our current district procedure does explicitly allow high school students to use phones between classes and at lunch. And if we were going to take this approach, that policy and procedure would need to change. Again, given our experience, RSU1 in Bath does provide an updated policy that they changed last year in preparation for the implementation of their system, as well as an updated procedure. And we also, I spoke with a school administrator from South Carolina, which as you may know, we're not unique here. Many districts in Maine and across the country have been grappling with this challenge. Some districts and states have in fact enacted laws expecting that schools restrict access to personal technology devices. And so I spoke with one administrator, yeah, thank you, Kim, who helped connect us from South Carolina, who shared another sample policy that's just a reference point. I do think our group's visit to Morse, we were talking about the issues and challenges, but I think we really felt like our visit to Morse was really impactful, and it seemed like they've created a wheel that works, and why should we reinvent it? So we felt like that solution exists and we should explore it ourselves. So again, Yonder is the tool that they use. It is a pouch system where students are each assigned a locking pouch, and their phone and other personal technology is locked in that pouch throughout the school day. They retain possession of those devices in the pouch, but it's locked throughout the school day. And I'm not going to go too much further into the specifics of that at this point. Doesn't come without a cost. We did speak with Yonder, and in order to implement that system at both our high school and our middle school, that would cost about $50,000. And similarly, if we did go in this direction, I think we learned both from Morse and from conversations with other administrators that a well-articulated, widely understood system of progressive discipline and consequences that ensures that students learn from their mistakes, but also know that they cannot access their phones during the school day is essential. And we do have Morse's example to guide us in that development. And as I said before, I think we do have ongoing work for community education. Our students have access to devices from a very young age, and our parents may need additional support in defining outside of school use. Just a couple of parent survey data points. On the left, at what age did you first provide your child with a smartphone, or at what age are you planning to? And so as you can see, most parents in our district provide their students with their first phone either at ages 11 to 12 or 13 to 14, but we do have students receiving their first phone as early as 9 or 10 or even younger. Some other parents do wait until their child is 15 or 16, but it's pretty rare for students to not have something by the time they turn 17. And it's clear that our families do have at-home restrictions or guidelines in place for for their environments at home. And I think it's important that we maybe learn from one another and share those types of things. I think parents consistently report feeling like alone in this, that they're fighting with their own child, feeling like they need to get their kid a phone, or they need to allow access to Snapchat, or they need something because other parents are doing the same. And I think bringing parents together to share strategies and resources is really important moving forward. So that was a whole lot of talking and a whole lot of data, and I'm sorry for that, but I wanted to be comprehensive in this. So thank you for your attention. Thank you to the members of the group who are here and for their dedication to the investigation and open dialogue on this. And I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Gregory.
Could you speak to the people who might be watching this who might have a child with an IEP? I'm thinking of a student who has diabetes and
Sure.
they have a phone. And so the situations that would allow
Sure.
the phones and also how are they going to navigate a world where they might be the only ones with a phone? I don't know if you could speak to any other, I just know
Yep.
about diabetes, but if you have another example.
Sure. I mean, I think that is again, I'll try not to refer to this exclusively, but we did have that conversation at Morse, and I think Eric Varney, the principal there, shared that their population is similar to ours, a little bit smaller as a school, but I think he shared that they have 5 students in total in the school that have some sort of exception that allows them to have their phone on them. Interestingly, Yonder does provide a different pouch that looks exactly the same as the locking ones, but that just opens right up so that you can assign those pouches to students in that situation so that they look like they're doing the same thing, but then may actually privately access their phone. And indeed, we do have students in our school who use their phones for necessary medical conditions like diabetes, and we would need to be prepared to make exceptions for those and to guide those students in how to use. So, yeah, thank you. I think I've put you to sleep. Am I calling on people? Kim?
I've had the experience of attending a concert where Yonder pouches were used. And so I have this image of like the cattle coming in and coming out. And so I'm wondering if the committee talked about just like what the mechanics of this arrival and departure will look like in terms of students locking or not, how that happens practically.
Sure. I mean, I can certainly speak to it, but Danielle also visited Morse with me. So, I mean, if you want to offer what that looks like.
Yeah.
The day that we went in, somewhere in January.
January.
It was really a seamless process, and so they had tables set up, with the locking devices sort of attached to the tables. It was a nice, kind of admin standing there, greeting kids, welcoming kids. Do you have your cell phone? And kids would sort of put their backpack on the table, take it out, put it in the pouch. So it also enabled like a nice conversation for staff to have with kids at the start of the day. But by that point in January, there was no delay in kids coming in. And he sort of indicated that really didn't last very long. And then at the end of the day, similarly, there's, the tables are brought back out with the visual locking device and kids are kind of going out with simply just sort of unlock and go. Interestingly enough, there were students forgetting to actually unlock their pouch. And so they had to mount a locking device outside of the school because kids were getting home and realizing that they hadn't remembered to unlock their pouch, which I thought was fantastic. So, it really, I think there's going to be an adjustment at the start as they figure it out, but it wasn't anything that he said wasn't, easy.
Everybody got into the routine. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that just to add to that, Eric said this was actually his greatest fear was he felt like he really enjoyed his mornings, as I do, greeting students as they arrive to school. And his greatest fear was that was going to become like a negative interaction about putting their phones away. And he actually said it's kind of had the opposite effect, that in the past, even despite his best efforts, and I can attest to this, sometimes students would just stream right by like, hey, how are you, Gregory? And Gregory wants nothing to do with Principal Chris Hoffman, so he'll just walk right on by. Whereas this system actually creates like a half-second pause where more students have been willing to engage and at least say hello. And so I thought that was an interesting side effect. Hudson, I think you've been waiting the longest.
I
and then
mean,
Frank.
it's all good. I have two comments, but I'll lead with the first one, which is I want to express my gratitude in particular to the students who participated. And I'm going to include you, Lydia, because you're in part of this conversation at this point now, because it can be hard to disagree with a grown-up who's not your parent in a situation. And like clearly that's what these students did. And I'm really glad they did, because to your point, you know, in the presentation, that voice is important and we need to hear it. So I think it's really important to particularly express my own gratitude to those who participated in person, not just with the survey, which was great, but the ones who speak directly to this, because it can take a lot to say, actually, all the adults around me, I think you're wrong, and here's why. And so I'm just really glad that we have students who are able to do that, and I'm grateful for it.
Right.
From my experience at our recent Senate meeting, my position aligns more with that else. So it's hard for me. It's hard for me to speak to this and try to educate my younger peers as well, because obviously this policy, if it is enacted next year, will not affect me. But if I was still in school, I know, obviously, as most people would have concerns about, it would take an adjustment period and I would struggle with it. But in the long term, it would extremely benefit me. So I did have one more small logistic question. For the lock boxes on the yonder pouches, is it really like just a few second long procedure? Because I know kids are very eager to get out the door at the end of the day. And would that impact like the struggle with the parking lot and getting out of school?
So, yeah, I mean, if you can, and I think it's important just to sort of bear in mind that like you're keeping, like you and every student would be assigned a pouch that like you keep. You don't leave it here at school. You bring it with you just like your phone and just like your laptop and laptop case, it goes in your backpack. And so it's truly a matter of you like walking by, placing it, walking. Then if you retain all the pieces, it's just that by doing that, you open the lock. Yes, Holly.
Thank you. One question, one comment. Did anybody speak about compliance, like kids trying to sneak past the system and not utilizing it, and like how well it is followed through with? And then I have a follow-up kind of comment after that.
Yeah, I think I spoke both with the administrator in South Carolina and our experience at Morrison. I think we have to be prepared to expect some non-compliance. Eric shared sort of yeah, that non-compliance may take all kinds of different forms, including, you know, sneaking a phone in or having a second phone. I mean, these are things that we already have, where we do already confiscate phones from certain students when it becomes problematic or their use is really a distraction. And we've seen students with second phones and third phones. And so that's not necessarily new. But I think it's clear that even while some of that certainly may occur, it's just created a new norm where that's not the general experience of the population. Yeah, I don't know, Jim, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just that one of the things that stuck with me from our meeting at Morse, I think it was the dean of students or the assistant principal, dean of students, I believe, said that the change that has come is that before this, students would be referred to the office for disciplinary because the rule was in place not to use the phones during the school day. But students would come and it would be a question of rationales and having to dig through reasons and there was a huge gray area. At this point, it is black and white. It's a binary situation. So he described, it's no issue. Somebody comes in, you had your phone. What are you doing? You know the rules, and this is it. So and again, that's relationship. It's not there a significant reduction in attempts to work the system.
And you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so just in regards to the communication piece for the parents and the kids, if wondering if there's maybe a workaround that we could create that might help. And so like one thought, I don't even know if it's possible, but is there a way to utilize Parent Square as a way to communicate between students and parents for school purposes or related activities, I guess? Or two, allowing like parents' emails only to be able to be emailed back to the kid. Because I don't know if I think right now it's set up like if you were to try to email a student from an outside email address, it gets bounced back.
That is true in the younger grades. At the high school, I know actually students can
That
receive
is
outside
a thing.
emails.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, maybe we kind of
Totally.
align that through middle school as an opportunity
Yep.
to say, if you need to talk to your kid,
Sure.
you're not completely cut off from it. You could be going through the school by just saying, hey, don't forget to go to dad's house tonight instead of here.
Sure.
Just
I
a
think-
way to alleviate the parent.
Yeah, it's absolutely something we need to prepare for and be prepared for. I think I'm already envisioning, I think, you know, we have communication tools, we have phones in our building, and I'm envisioning perhaps, you know, reinstating the practice that existed when I was in school, which was that like there were student volunteer office runners who moved messages around the building that came in from parents. I would say like one of the greatest things that Morse reported, great not being good necessarily, although I think it is good, but just greatest in terms of impact was that they saw in the month of September an almost doubling of the number of nurse office visits than they had the year before. Because when a kid wants to go home now from school, when they feel sick or just claim to feel sick, they just text their parents. Their parents call the school and dismiss them. And they don't ever actually interact with an adult necessarily in the building except for checking out when they leave. And I actually think it would be a positive thing for our nurse to see more students who need care, because potentially those students don't actually need to go home. We can keep them in the building. And so I think it is an excellent point. Yeah, I saw Rick over here if I could, and then back to Mary. Yeah.
So sort of two areas. One, I just want to compliment you on including student voice in the presentation. And I have a question and suggestion. Thanks. So compliment to address the fact that you did a great job including student voice in the presentation. And the question suggestion is, one, do you know if RSU1 similarly surveyed their students, and if they had a follow-up survey regarding screen time use? I'd be curious about that. And my suggestion would be, even if RSU did not do that, presuming changes are made, I would suggest we do that.
Yeah.
Just to kind of get the post feedback from the student voices. I think it'd be really interesting if we did that for the students, but also noted if there was change in perspective.
Yeah.
And then
And
my
I can-
other question.
Let me just quickly answer
Oh,
that one.
go ahead.
So they did do a pre-survey of their community. It was similar. I think their students didn't want it. At their board meeting where they adopted it, the two students voted against it. So sentiment there was no different necessarily. And I'm not aware of like a post-survey. We did have several students who we met with that day, and I would say two were very positively in support of the experience they've had. And one was, you know, I think qualified positive in the experience that he's had with the change, and saying that none of them said they wanted it to begin with, but all felt like they've sort of benefited in ways they didn't expect now that they've lived through it. So yeah.
And then my second question was just, how do they handle the phone use on district transportation?
Yeah.
Maybe both just standard transportation to and from school on buses, but then are there any exceptions for sporting events, et cetera? I didn't know if you could speak to that at all.
It's not restricted necessarily. on transportation on the way to school and on the way home. It's really defined by the experience in the building. And so, yeah, I think that that's probably the best, most direct answer to your question. Yeah.
So kids are unlocking them at the bell at the end of the
Yeah.
school day.
Yeah, I think we did hear, one of the things that I think all of the students said as an unexpected consequence that they had was that they felt like, even outside of school, they were more likely to like forget that their phone was on them. Yeah. Sure. Yes, Mary Hobson,
Just checking because I.
representative from Thompson.
Does that include watches?
Yes, so watches also go in the pouches. And that reminds me of an important point that we also did discuss, which was like, I didn't include this in the slideshow, but I think we all agreed that it's important that we staff members model the expectations that we have for students. That's not to say necessarily that we're going to give our staff members yonder pouches too, but that we really do a good job of restricting adult use in the building as well. Yeah, Hudson. Hey,
On a
Representative
similar note to
Bodnar.
that, I've looked at my watch several times, it's beeped at me, and I have decided tonight I'm going to take my watch off before I come to these meetings from now on, because I think that's the right thing to do, both as a board member and of modeling. So thank you for making me think about that tonight. I just wanted to sort of share with the board some of my thinking, because when Chris came to the policy committee, I did some research ahead of that, looking at what the RSU1 process had been and watched a lot of their meetings and read a lot of their documentation. And so I've been thinking about it a lot since then. I've been really interested to hear like what the report would be. And I really believe that the yonder pouch is the right move. And I didn't start thinking that. I was like, well, we can totally find some sort of a, analog solution to that and just, tell them to lock it up. But I was sort of convinced as I did more reading. I don't know. I want to look at that list in full at some point. Most of my reading was based on the RSU1 stuff, since that was available ahead of time. But anyway, just to cut to the chase, the idea of like how often are you thinking about your phone really matters. And if you're putting your phone in a cubby in the classroom, you're thinking about your phone at the beginning of every class, you're thinking about the phone at the end of every class. You may be forced, because of a procedure like that, to actually think about your phone more than a student like Lydia maybe does now, where she puts it in her bag when she gets to school and she doesn't think about it all day. But with a cubby requirement, now all of a sudden it's phone at the beginning and end of every class. And I also think there's a network effect that comes into play. If there's no phone use during the school day, there's nothing to miss out on. Sure. And I think that's so important. And I think just like we have an opportunity to be responsible to provide that. And I think that that could go a really long way. So I just wanted to sort of share some of my thinking and my gratitude again to everyone involved in this process. This is so thorough, and it's been really great to absorb the fruits of your labor.
I think some of the articles that we read together, one in particular, did talk about like, ranges of solutions and different types of solutions. And, I think, yeah, like the classroom cubby is, practice we currently have in some cases. I mean, there's other extreme, like restrictive mechanisms, like lockers where phones can be locked away. I heard a lot about that at the elementary level in South Carolina, which was interesting. I think we have maybe a little bit more work to do with our elementary team to know if that's necessary among our elementary students. But and that's actually a practice that our partners at Region 10 use, where students lock their phones in a locker throughout their classes at Region 10. I think the big distinction there is that they're basically there for almost an entire day for a 4-hour chunk of time, and they don't move to a different class during that time. And so, that's our challenge, obviously, is that we change classes and go to lunch and do all sorts of things. And so a more flexible, so I think the logistics of a locker system would be really challenging for us, for sure. Danielle, did you want to add to that?
In the research, and then again, when we met with the students at once, you can hear sort of that counter argument of to be teaching them the responsibility of the cell phone and how to monitor and how to appropriately use it throughout the day. I think in the research, and again, it was sort of like indicated by the students, it's almost like the removal of the cell phone is the education.
The not having access to it for that chunk, like what allowed them to reflect on the impact that it was having on them, the addiction that it was having on them, that in and of itself was the education. And that really resonated with me, because I think that's an argument we hear a lot, like we should be educating them how to really use it. And I think I just firmly believe that their frontal cortex isn't developed enough to allow us to educate them in that way while they have it, but the removal of it allowed them to sort of individually reflect on their usage and their addiction. And I think that that was really impactful.
Yeah, and I would add, I think one of the greatest challenges about this for me is that that is the core of what we do. We want students to become independently functioning adults. And I think frankly, not every one of our students needs this. And I think even some of the students who've maybe worked with us in this process, if we go in this direction, probably will feel like this is a punitive measure we're taking against them, and like they're not the ones with a problem. And I think that's fair. Like I think we have some students who do have more fully developed frontal cortexes, or who have learned the lessons somehow else on their own and may not need this full-blown intervention that we're talking about here. But I firmly believe that's not most of our students. It's not. So, Frank.
Yeah, I would encourage the group before we spend the $50,000 to see the video on how easy they're to break into, because they can break into them with a pencil, and I would make sure that we are cognizant of that.
That actually was mentioned, that one of the pieces, because one of the concerns on the part of parents, I need to be in touch with my kids, and the bags can be opened. They can be, pulled apart. The magnet does it more easily, but you can rip them open. There's no question, but that's not an issue, not something they were seeing. And again, I go back, Chris, you sort of made light of, the principal made this comment of walking down the halls and kids pre this effort. And it's not just kids, it's adults putting up their phone and fake scrolling to avoid the social connection so that they didn't have to. And that's gone now. Another thing we discussed, and you just mentioned briefly the word addiction, that this is a mental health issue. It is an addiction issue. And it's not only children, it is across. So it will, and you made comment of that, Chris, about the importance of ongoing education and keeping the conversation going, that it's not in any way punitive. It is a forward thinking. The world is full of people who can hang on their phone all day long. The people who will run the world will be the ones who can put them away from time to time and focus. Multitasking is a myth.
I'll just one last plug for the portability of these bags, because I know as a parent who does appreciate my child having their phone on them, I track them with GPS. And so like Life 360 or Find My Phone, if it is on their person, I can still track them even though they don't have access to said device. But I do also, I'm interested on the ability of like the getting into it and how easy that could be. And I also feel like just the notion of having this and putting it forward to the point, right, is like it's out of sight, out of mind. You see your peers doing it, everybody kind of falls with it. And so it becomes the social norm. And you hope that that sets the majority of the tone for everyone else. And thank you. This is great.
Hudson?
Just to briefly respond to the point that you, Holly, and Frank sort of made about the ease of circumvention. And it's like, yes, but we at our workshop earlier, we talked about integrity, we talked about citizenship, we talked about responsibility. And so it's not so much about putting up an impenetrable barrier that nobody can break. It's about, helping our students get across the line. And then we have an expectation of behavior, we're a community that works together and we respect each other and we don't just break things, willy-nilly, it's sort of, so while I agree that there's going to be people who are interested in how to circumvent it, my hope is that like, that's frowned upon, so socially, right? Like that's not cool. And I think we can get to that. I really do.
Yeah, did you?
I would be really curious to see, if you did a survey after the fact. I would also like if the teachers, student success rate, like if kids are doing better work and getting more homework turned in, and I'd be really interested to see like how work habits change also after the underpush, because I fully support it. I think it's great, and I hope that we do.
Feeling like you've heard enough
you.
Chris Hoffman tonight, so.
Sounds like a great project for AP Stats.
That's the main thing. She was like, I don't care. I'm not going to be here next year.
Really quickly, as we sort of wrap that up, Amy, I've got a question. What do we want our next steps to be for this? Do we think, does this go to the policy committee? Does the work group have more work to do before that happens at the board level? I just, and it's okay if we don't know. I guess that's my question.
Well, is the work group finished?
I think, I think our recommendations are there in terms
Okay.
of the next steps, being related to policy,
Okay.
as well as procedure practice. And then, I think in terms of our group's work, we did talk about potentially meeting more, really to think about, the parent engagement and community education side of this in terms of like supporting parents and responsible habits. I'm looking at Dot in particular because I think Dot expressed that viewpoint quite a lot as a kindergarten teacher, someone that sees a lot of young children coming from homes where maybe that's not always the case in terms of what kids are experiencing at home. So we did talk about continuing to meet to like develop some of those resources on the community side. But I think it's, as far as next steps, I'm ready to pick this up and do whatever you need me to do in terms of suggested revisions to policy or suggested budgeting necessary for solutions like Yonder. I guess I look to you for that direction.
I would say feels like there's pretty unanimous support for the idea of exploring it, so we should go forward on all levels. We should have, I guess, so I just direct the policy committee to
Yeah,
do it?
if the board wants the policy
vote?
committee.
I would make a motion that we accept the 3 recommendations that the committee has come forward with. And that would mean that we begin with policy.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded. All those in favor? Okay, so policy committee will take this up.
I will coordinate with the chair of this committee. So we have a meeting next week that this will not be on. So this will probably be, unless we feel the need, we need to schedule a special meeting. This will be covered in our April policy committee meeting.
I would expect this would be something that we would aim to start in September.
Yeah.
It feels like there's going to need to be budgeting and all of that stuff, so.
But I think we could probably presume budgetarily, even if the policy is not finalized.
Right,
then.
I just don't think we can do it without the budget.
Yeah,
So I'm just saying,
agreed.
I wouldn't have a special meeting.
Okay.
So put it in your workflow.
Awesome. And yeah, Chris, I'll connect with you ahead of that meeting so we've got materials that we need appropriately. And hopefully extend invitations both to members of the work group who helped to put this together. You should participate in that meeting, and maybe the student senate to some degree as well, to just have them be part of the process.
Just want to
want to say one thing about this and about Chris. This was his leadership challenge. Actually started my first July at my house when we were having a little administrator retreat. And we talked about cell phone usage, and I said, this sounds like a really good leadership challenge for you. And so I just really want to say that I'm really proud of you, Chris, for hanging in there and moving this forward and doing the steps to make the change. So I appreciate that. So proud of you.
The finance committee will take note also of potential increase. I saw Evan already taking notes. Okay, are you set to go ahead with policy? Okay, we will move on. Thank you, Chris. We will move on to 6.3 to consider a board review of proposed revisions to existing procedure BEDBR agenda format.
So moved. So this began as the streamlining of the agenda to match up with current practice, as well as to sort of fix a couple stray numbering inconsistencies as we moved into a digital first workflow. But then the board expressed, I would say, consistent interest in including a consent agenda into the agenda format. So this is that revision of a procedure. We discussed this at several policy committee meetings throughout the process of revising this. We wanted to be thoughtful about it. And I think we've ended up with something that is really effective. It accounts for adjustments we make on the regular, right? When we say, let's move that executive session to the end, right? Like this accounts for that from the beginning. It accounts for in the consent agenda, moving through some things at with a single vote and the ability to pull it out if we want. There is a policy that's going to go along with this, which is the next item on our agenda, which sort of helps flesh out the consent agenda. And I do think that this board will probably feel their way through the way that best works for us. But the whole point is to give ourselves that tool that's available for us. So yeah, that's sort of the short version of that.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Alrighty.
Look forward to it. So we will move on to item 6.4 to consider a first reading of the proposed new policy BEDBA for consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
So yes, this is basically just a policy that explains the consent agenda and includes a non-exclusive list of the items that we, at this point in time, as the policy committee and with Amy's input as chair, anticipate might be included in the consent agenda. The idea is these are things that are not substantive votes. They are not controversial votes, because those things we tackle separately with the opportunity for discussion. And again, just as to call out a point about the consent agenda, at the beginning, when you go to the consent agenda items to vote on them, any board member on their own can say, pull out 3.1, and that's immediately pulled out. There's no discussion, it's done. So nobody needs to worry about if they want to talk about something or whatever. So like I said, that's what I mean when I will sort of feel our way through. We'll see, are there things that are consistently getting pulled out? Well, maybe those shouldn't go in the consent agenda, things like that. But this just spells it out and gives us some guidance on how it works, because it's a new thing.
Good. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Moving along to consider 6.5 to consider a first reading a proposed new policy BEB, board member use of social media.
So moved.
Second.
So this one, I feel like you've probably heard us talk about before. This is the first time it's coming to the board. This originated out of a workshop that Gregory and I participated in last summer, where the MSMA / Drummond Woodson presented on some changes to the legal landscape regarding elected officials like us, as well as state government employees like administrators and staff. And so that's what the other policy here is, to cover that side. But basically, it dealt with some more recent case law about the ways in which that we interact on social media or the internet can turn into official communications and thus, implicate, one's ability to say like, block someone on Facebook or things like that, right? Or like get the liking of a comment overinterpreted. So this is based on sort of legal policy work that the MSMA and Drummond Woodsum did. The policy committee looked at it. We reviewed it with our attorneys. They said, looks good, thumbs up with the minor adjustments. But the purpose of this is not about restricting the behavior of board members. It's sort of about making the board members protect themselves. It's sort of what I think about it. It's like you post some text that makes clear what your posting capacity is. And that way we can avoid the crossing of the streams, shall we say.
Right. Oh, Mary?
I just just wonder what this looks like. I mean, I'm obviously not a heavy Facebook user, they ever use it, but I don't know where you post something like that. And like, I don't even know how often you post something like that. And like, if you just want to say a comment on somebody's thing, does that also need that post? It's
So
clear to me how that works.
what I would respond to that with is, and most social media, it's going to vary from service to service. For example, on Facebook, anyone who looks at my page, I put this up a couple weeks ago because I was like, I'll get ahead of it. And then my brother's like, did you get in trouble for something after I posted this? Like, no, I didn't get in trouble. I was just trying to practice what I preach. But you can pin a comment. So I made a Facebook post that used the language that's spelled out within this policy, and then I pinned it. So it's always at the top of my page. So when anyone goes to my page, that will be the first thing that they see.
You can pin stuff.
You can pin stuff so it stays at the top of the timeline. And then the language about including it when you make a post, it's only you need to include that if you're making a post or responding to somebody else's post that's about board relevant areas of interest, right? So if you're replying to someone's wedding photo saying, this wedding looks amazing, you're not implicated, you don't have to do anything. But if someone's like, I can't believe there was a snow day today, and you post, well, the roads were terrible, then you're talking about something that you may in fact have influence on as a board member, and you'd say, this is my personal opinion, and it's not been vetted by Amy and Heidi, or whatever. Again, I don't have the language memorized, but that's sort of when that would come into play, if that makes sense.
So that doesn't seem clear in the policy. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but
So posting the following language with any social media post related to school business, I'm not saying that to call you out, I'm just trying to be,
yeah.
trying to drill into
I
where,
don't see that on, it says relating to school business, somehow I'm missing that.
that's all good. No.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not really just on board, I'm getting used to using this, but. Anyway.
You're all
Okay, yeah,
good.
that was the question I had about that, because I don't use Facebook all that often, but when I do, I guess I just have to learn how to do what you just did, which is pin it.
If you need help, I'm your guy.
Jessica, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, but Mary just asked the same question I
Okay.
was asking.
Frank?
Yeah, I would wonder how this would be if somebody had a particular opinion, say about Title IX. How would, that's a political opinion, that is not or a law opinion, that is not an opinion of necessarily of a board member. I'm kind of wondering where that might fall.
I can offer my personal thought, which is that if it's something that could relate to school business, then Title IX, obviously, we've talked about it a lot the last several meetings. I would, if someone were asking me their advice, I would say, throw the disclaimer on your post. It's not that you can't make the post, you just put the disclaimer saying, hey, this is Hudson Hayward, the individual, saying this thing, not me authorized by the school board to make a comment. That's where I would lean in that, but I would say that if people encounter bubble, questions, you go to the chair, and if the chair's not sure, she can talk to our lawyers. There's chains of resources available, and
Yeah, that was a rhetorical question, but it is important that we make sure that we are clear on what we can do and can't do.
That's fair.
I think you should err on the side of making clear that's your personal opinion, not a school board opinion. It would be a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, I've seen people do that.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's a good question.
I mean, in my professional social media, every post is about Title IX. So, we may have board members who, like myself, have professions that sort of cause them to be commenting generally on school policy issues. And, this is not really intended to meddle with that. But for someone who, in the future may be similarly situated as me, like I'll have to sort of think about how I handle that. And I sort of LinkedIn, profile, which is a social media platform that I use, not an inconsequential amount for professional reasons.
And I would add, just again, the purpose of this policy is not to be about restricting board member activities. It's about some guidance and again, truly protections. Like the results of these court cases, just for and Gregory can help me if I'm getting this wrong, it was like a town councilor who had like a private Facebook page, but he started posting information related to his work as a town councilor. He got sued because he blocked people, and they're like, hey, you've got official information on your Facebook page and you blocked us. And he lost the lawsuit because he had been posting official stuff, right? So that's what I mean about protection. It's not about, hammering in all these restrictions. It's sort of about just giving us some good guardrails to keep ourselves, our duties, our personal lives and our duties here clear. So if there's issues that come up, I would say, if they are serious or ongoing, we would look at this again.
Gregory.
And I would just add, like, none of us want discovery on our devices because we didn't put a little tag that says, these views are my own. This just protects you. It doesn't take away your right to free speech. It just protects you from somebody saying, oh, you're a board. You're speaking for the board. What else have you said on that computer of yours?
Right. Jim.
Following up on Chris's report on the committee, I was part of the visit to Morse, and I was so moved by that. I continue at jimmoulton.org. I have a blog, and I wrote a post, and this is what I put at the head of it. So it's not the exact language. I started with disclaimer, : I write that, not semicolon. I write this as a parenthesized retired educator and parent, parenthesized, and grandparent who cares deeply about education and its impact on the future of all our children, as well as the future of the planet. I was involved in the visit described here through my being a school board member in MSAD 75. My thoughts here must in no way be construed as representing those of that board or any other person or part of MSAD 75. So
I think that's pretty perfect, Jim.
And what it's caused me, because I was thinking, I don't do social media, I must admit, I stepped away from the meeting briefly and saw it. And in fact, a blog post is considered social media because it has the ability to be shared out but my blog posts are never shared out anywhere. But understood nobody wants what you described.
Any other comments? Are we ready to vote on the first read? Okay, all in favor of the first read? It's unanimous. Thank you. No, a lot of policies. Next, we will consider a similar policy for employees. Proposed new policy GCSB, employee use of social media.
So moved.
Second.
So this is the employee counterpart to the one we just did. A couple top-level points I'd point out. One of the things that this sort of makes clear, which is already practiced in our conversations with Heidi at the committee level was clear, is that social media is not to be used for staff members interacting with students. Facebook messaging, no. Like in this is that's clear in other places, but it's also made clear here. Like that's not the way that's supposed to work. There may be official Facebook pages for a program or a school or the district or a club or team, and those are a little different. And there's some information here about how to sort of like get official approval, through the administration to make sure that your use of social media in that kind of a context is approved. But that's sort of just sort of a big thing that this sort of just helps spell out. And then school administrators, as people of authority within the district, are held to sort of are provided similar protections in this policy via similar boilerplate language. And again, you don't have to be an elected official to be a representative of the school district accidentally on your own Facebook page. And so that's not every teacher, not every ed tech is necessarily expected to have the same level of disclaimer. but administrators are called out specifically because they have a higher position of authority within the district. Does that policy committee agree with my presentation of that at this point? Cool. So that's that.
Mary?
Just had a little question about what is the role of the principal here? Like principal of the school, because there was something about everything has to go through them or something like that, like.
So let's say Corey wanted to do a like STEM Facebook group to publicize her work with the STEM class. That's not an unreasonable thing to want to do. Share her group's achievement with the world, or like the robotics club at the high school, right? Their request to sort of do that goes through the principal. Hey, Chris, I want to do this on social media. It is going to involve students. Here's why it's appropriate. Here's why it's not falling afoul of other requirements. Yeah. Yeah, there's a, I mean, I don't know if there's an official form, but the idea is that they need to document it and supply it to Chris in writing what they want to do for that approval process. I don't think we specify the form, but there's information that Chris sort of would need to sign off on. So that's the idea. That's the role that a principal will play in that scenario. Is just, you know, safeguarding that the use of social media, which I expect to be relatively rare, not unheard of, but not super common, involving students, is done properly.
Because I just wonder, like, I mean, just in the everyday running of your school stuff, like there's pages that we have. I know they're probably all on that format now, but I just want, I know when I was in school, we didn't have those formal things, but just doing stuff with this class as we were going to be doing, we would put out regular stuff, and I don't know.
And so a lot of that has moved to Parent Square. So for example, like when the
Aldi.
and that's to that point, like it's not about being social media. The district provides platforms for that kind of dissemination within the district or within families. So like when the second grade has a guest speaker and a bunch of photos get taken, that was shared via Parent Square, not via a Facebook group, you know. And so there's no public component to that. You're part of the group within that scenario.
Thanks. I just wanted to wonder
Good
about
question.
the massive stuff that comes through teachers to their kids. And if it all had to go through the principal to be approved, that'd be.
No, I think of this as like outgoing posting, you know, involving of students in social media posting. Not, you know, if you're capturing something to show your kids, that's different, I would say, pretty clearly.
Brian?
I have a couple things here. One is wording in paragraph 4, where employees should not is used a couple of times rather than something like may not. I'm just curious if that was discussed as an approach rather than more concrete.
I will confess, I don't think we drilled in on that specific language. This originates as a Drummond-Woodsum sample policy that we adjusted slightly. But I don't think we called that out, nor did our own lawyers when they reviewed it.
I would ask, or I would like to see that read may not should not, to be very explicit. But that's just one thought, so I'm obviously open to what others think. And then one thing that I'm thinking through here as I'm looking at this, and I haven't fully wrapped my head around it, and it's maybe just a comment to spur a little more discussion, is if reading this indicates that we can use certain platforms or any social media platform, I think, to communicate, say, basketball practice is moving from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. We could use Facebook to do that?
No.
That's all on Parent
That would be.
It's on Parent Square, but does it say in here that those can't be used for that? I see like the one-on-one communication, but I don't see it saying that like a group communications could not be used, if I'm saying that correctly.
The practice is that we can create groups on Parent Square. So for example, if you're a teacher, you can create a group of your class. If you want to include parents, it can do that as well. If you're a coach, your entire roster can be on there, and everything can be done right through Parent Square. And there are ability to comment on there. There's ability to take comments off if you want to, but it should be, that is the practice.
And I know that's the practice, but as far as I'm aware, it also happens on other platforms and I mean, I don't know if Chris would have insight or anything else on that, but like, as far as I'm aware, it happens on both.
Before Chris chimes in, what I'm very interested to say, what I would sort of point out is that the way that the policy sort of attempts to deal with that without getting excessively prescriptive is the line, the board encourages district employees to use established school channels and/or accounts when possible and appropriate. And any social media with student involvement has to get approved by the principal. So with those two things combined, for a team to do that would need
So,
principal approval.
I think maybe what I'm advocating for then is to be explicit, that I don't feel that Facebook or something's an appropriate place for us to communicate and steer our students to, as a place to receive communication from the school. I think that aligned with what we heard a lot about the cell phone technology policies and things that we can do to help keep kids off of those platforms is part of a service we can kind of provide to the greater community. And we have these other things to do it, and where it needs to be done there, I think saying that that's where it will be done is an opportunity when I look at this.
Just a couple comments, because I think they will all relate. I think number one is, to your sort of question, as Heidi was suggesting, I do think Parent Square is set up, and over the course of this year, I think we've been largely successful in implementing it as a tool that contains our communication in a more secure platform. I know, our teachers are using it for messaging about classes as well as individual messages. Our teams are largely using it. I think we are still in a transition phase, and there are elements of communication that happen outside of our control, and that's always going to be true. That is challenging, meaning, Hudson and I might both be members of the cross-country team, probably better than me. And yet we might have a message exchange over Snapchat. And we might, just as two kids who both happen to run cross-country, be chatting with each other on Snapchat, and we might add others to the group. And before we know it, like, there might be sort of like an unofficial Snapchat conversation with most of the cross-country team that our coach isn't a part of. And so that's one of the more challenging circumstances that we face, is that, like, students just communicating with each other, like, that's their world. And so we can certainly discourage it, but it's going to be
And
hard.
I'm definitely not looking to, sorry if the way I worded it.
No, I just,
steer that. I'm not thinking that at all. I'm thinking the coach saying practice is moving from 3 to 4. It happens on Parent Square, but it also, from what I'm aware, some teams will still communicate. The coach will make that communication via Facebook, which I think then steers the kid to get that information from Facebook. And that's where I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for us to help
for sure
get kids off of some of those platforms, or at least not encourage it by
absolutely
doing that.
I think agreed, and that is our expectation, generally speaking, that any sort of official communications about practices or otherwise would happen through Parent Square. Perhaps some communications happen over our email system as well, but generally speaking, through Parent Square. I will acknowledge that I myself am a user of other social media platforms. As the principal of the school, I provide my primary communications, my weekly newsletter, for example, through Parent Square. But if I'm guided by policy otherwise to not do this, I'll stop. But I will say I do use Facebook and Instagram to just provide positive promotions about the school, because I think, personally, I think that's important, because there are people not in the community yet, and we want to project a positive image to that. We want people moving to our towns.
I agree fully with that too. Like and this has been through me thinking through this. I initially thought, I would love to not see those things there, but I think there's too much of an opportunity to use those platforms to get out the word and the good and all of that. I think it's those things that are direct contact pieces with students that happen on that, even if they're happening elsewhere, I think I would advocate for that not happening there, because we're in effect encouraging them to use that, to receive that. And I think that there's a lot of negative things that happen.
Yeah, I feel like the policy committee might have enough.
I was
to
going
take
to
this
say,
back and discuss
I'd
tightening it up.
I'd be happy to bring the policy committee, like essentially a one sentence liner to append to that sixth paragraph, I think.
Yeah, this is,
Fifth.
Say it much more succinctly and cleanly than I can.
But the point is, I mean, just to say is like, I think the point is well taken, you know, like for sure.
I think you understand.
Yeah,
You'll
I think I'm on
workshop
page
it.
for that. We could bring that back, you know, pretty
Sounds good.
straightforwardly.
Jim,
Just specifically, exactly what you describe. And again, the student use is important. When we were sitting in the room in Morse with teachers, administrators, and kids, one of the kids specifically said she was a field hockey player. And there was a Snapchat group that everybody used, not a coach telling them, but the kids were all hanging out on Snapchat. Don't forget your uniforms, da, 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 da. That's gone now. They no longer have access to, there was that constant buzz that this young woman described. Now that's gone. They've all got devices. They've got school issued one-to-one. They're using email. So they've stepped away. So the concern for the use of those social media platforms, the communications goes on, but I think it's important that there'll be a correlation, a connected effort, that the cell phone piece we're talking about, but this young woman spoke specifically to what you're describing.
Jessica?
Hopefully this will be quick, but page 1, section 1, approval of student involvement. I'm just hoping, Hudson, can you give me an example of what this would get at? Use of social media by an employee involving students for school-related purposes. I just couldn't figure out what this would be, having considered everything we just talked about. What, really?
No, sorry, I wasn't laughing because I think that was ridiculous. I was laughing because I agree. Like, so I will say nothing comes to the front of my mind, right? I could imagine, you know, posts being made, but like posts being made is not the same thing as student involvement, right?
Right.
It could be, you know, student, we typically get, you know, like permission for any kind of sharing of photographs separately. That would be covered sort of separately from this.
Like the WOW blog.
But like, exactly, right? Like student testimonials, right? Like, hey, maybe, you know, Chris Van Dusen comes to school and students write a bunch of things that get posted for everyone to see the amazing time they have Chris Van Dusen, along sort of Chris's point, like the mission of like sharing the good things that we do. And I would also say, like, while I can't think of a ton of necessarily deep examples, though Kim prompted a good one, I don't want to pretend that that just because I can't imagine that they don't exist. I like having the fact that there's a way to accommodate that without having to rewrite the policy down the line. But it's a good question. Again, I really agree.
Mary?
I just wondered if you wanted to make sure that the employees can look this over. And I mean, I don't know, I think it's something that if it's for them, they should kind of have a say in it.
Yeah, I can talk to Heidi. I don't know. See what makes sense there.
Could I comment on that? Yeah, I'm thinking that part of our charge is to create policy, and our policies are designed for the most efficient running of the schools. And this is clearly something that is within our purvey. And I would think that, well, first of all, I've never been a policy person on the board, but I would think that it is our responsibility to do this. And it is the responsibility of the staff to follow the policy that we write for the most efficient running of the schools.
Yeah, one more.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you, but I also think there are things that we that we don't even know, that we aren't aware of, that should maybe be in this policy, that they are aware of, just like Chris was talking about that particular piece. I mean, I just think there's more to this than what we in our limited vision have. I think openly. having other input can only be good. I don't think it's bad. I think it helps to, helps us to see the things that we're not seeing, that's all.
So one of the,
Go ahead. Go
Yeah.
ahead. I didn't know you.
On the bottom of that page, page 1 of 4, approval of student involvement. It really talks about by social media by an employee involving students for school-related purposes requires approval in advance. So we're not saying they can't use it for those types of things, but it does require a system of checks and balances. And what are they using it for? Is it for educational purposes? So we're not saying completely that it has to be banned. What we're saying is that we need approval, like we bring things to CIA for approval. Same type of situation in here. We're going to bring different programs for technology to the committee for AI. This is what this is doing. If you want to use it, I think we talked about a form that can be completed just like other things, and that's submitted. It first goes to the principal, and then if there's more questions, then it comes to the superintendent. And that gives us that layer of protection of, sure, you can still use it, but it has to be used in a certain way and not just out there for communicating on Messenger or one-to-one communication or posting. You know, you can post pictures, you can do, what's it for? Like, and that's what we're going to talk about. Does it make sense, Mary?
Yeah, it's just my feeling on it. So yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah.
Kim?
I'll just sort of respond to this last thing, and then I actually have a recommendation or suggestion that's responsive to Ryan's question earlier. I just sort of for everyone's benefit, it's very common that Heidi is keeping the administrative team sort of up to date about the things that we're talking about in the policy committee. So I think we get a lot of good sort of input from the administrative team, but of course, by extension, you know, the views that they're representing of the various teams in the school. So, I mean, if memory serves me, Hudson, this policy is our proposed adaption of MSMA model policies that were worked on with Drummond Woodsum. So,
Correct.
you know, I think this proposed policy is really supporting what the administration has already been trying to do, which is to make sure that technology is being used, you know, communications channels are being as streamlined as possible and are sort of happening inside of officially sanctioned, district sanctioned communication tools as much as possible. To that end, Ryan, I'm thinking about what you were asking in terms of more clarity about the expectation of using Parent Square and the like. And I think this draft endeavored to be very clear about that because it's sort of saying like you know, those channels are okay. And if you want to use these other channels that aren't by definition already sanctioned, we've got a process that you can, you know, pursue whether or not, and then we're going to have an approval process. So in the draft, I don't know if I'm making a proposal or this is maybe just something, Hudson, you would consider for possibly preparing for a second read. But in the sort of preamble, right before the 1, it says as SAD 75 sponsored sites such as Google Classroom, Parent Square. I wonder, Ryan, if that little paragraph or sentence, I guess it's a single sentence, if that had been tacked on to the definition of social media, 2 above, like, would that have made it clearer? Like, this policy applies to social media. This is how we define social media. These things are not social media. And so whether that would have accomplished the same thing rather than like the adding of any additional language, which is, I think, what you were suggesting you might do, Hudson. So I'm just sort of suggesting resequencing, Hudson, so that it kind of just
Yeah, I follow
goes a
you.
little bit more clearly to the reader.
Yeah, to state that, you know, it's moving paragraph 6 to either immediately follow or be part of paragraph 3.
To discuss that policy.
Yeah.
Good.
If the board is comfortable, I would suggest we approve the first read, and I can take these notes and synthesize them into something that the policy committee can look at. I'll probably have an updated policy agenda to present, but tomorrow, but that's no big deal, I don't think. So if the board is comfortable with that, that's what I would propose we do at this point.
So moved.
Well, yeah.
Oh, Haley.
I just wanted to back up a little bit and try to answer Jessica's question that she had about the number one. The way I would see this happening, because I do like Parent Square, but I feel like it's not great for like coming together and having everything really easy to find, because my daughter's swim coach used it and it's just hard to navigate, in my opinion. So I could see this, so an approval needing to be happen, say, you know, we approved the Spanish teacher to bring the kids to wherever in 2026. I could see the Spanish teacher starting a Facebook group for all the parents to be added to and the students to be added to put pictures on of their trip while they're there. So I don't know if that makes it a little easier to understand, but that's what I would see happening.
They're
with
using
something like that.
WhatsApp so you can
Yeah.
talk internationally more readily. Yeah.
Good example. Good examples. Bravo. Smarter than me.
Any other comments? So, so if well, I've already moved that we send this back to policy committee with these notes and approve the first read. So we need a second. Seconded by Frank. All in favor? Is that unanimous? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry, one abstention. Wait, you're abstaining from whether it's a first read?
Yeah, because I just have a question. I'm not sure I like the idea of like Parent Squared is the one thing everybody has to use to communicate. I just think that's weird.
Well, you can vote no.
What?
You can vote no. Okay. Did you want? No, okay. Next is, we have so many policies. Next is
2 meetings worth. That's
six,
why.
that's right, 2 meetings worth of policies. 6.7, to consider a first reading the proposed revisions to existing policy BDAA, unexpired board officer term fulfillment.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so BDAA is currently our BBBE. This is another one of those, as I looked at the policy as part of the policy committee's work, I realized that we were out of alignment with the national policy system as well as the MA policy system, and took the opportunity to get us better aligned. So this arose out of our vote in, I believe, September, when we needed to elect a new vice chair. And it was very clear that while we had engaged very heavily the previous year with the rotation of the towns with regular elections, we found ourselves in a situation where we didn't know the best way to proceed with the placing of vice chair while we were in the term and respecting the rotation. So following that, the policy committee took this up. We talked this over several meetings. I say here we approached it thoughtfully, and I was really impressed with the amount of care and consideration I think that everyone in the committee brought to. I want to call out Gregory particularly, who had brought a lot of very thoughtful proposals that the rest of us hadn't thought of, including like the way this impacts the finance committee. And I'm really grateful to him in particular for that on this. But anyway, the purpose of these changes are entirely to give the board guidance on how to honor the rotation if we need to replace the vice chair, because ultimately the vice chair is the source of the rotation, right? Since the vice chair is expected to become chair, the vice chair position must respect the rotation. Whereas if we needed to replace the chair, we could replace it with anybody from any town, and the rotation would continue because the vice chair was already in place. So that's sort of what we attempted to do. This policy tries to clarify how we move from town to town when we need to replace the vice chair, what might happen to the finance committee depending on the time of year the vice chair might be replaced. It also entertains the idea of an acting vice chair in addition to the previous versions, including an acting chair, depending on when this might be, just so we can sort of try to cover all our bases and make sure we've got good leadership. Because as Amy can attest, it's important to have good leadership, and it's important to have someone to play backup for you effectively if you as chair are unavailable or need your partner. So that's what's going on here.
Any questions or comments? Yeah,
That's because of the good work the committee did. I can't say again, the committee really dug in deep on this one.
I appreciate it. And we all lived through the confusion of not having a good policy a few months ago. So let's see, all those in favor?
Beautiful.
That is everyone. Thank you. Okay, to consider along those same lines, to consider a first reading of a new policy, BBBE, director resignation and unexpired term fulfillment.
So moved.
Seconded.
So this one comes from an MSMA sample. The MSMA sample has different categories, different text for the type of school unit we are. We're, an SAD, so we use that language in here. Again, this, as I was looking at what was previously BBBE, I realized the coding discrepancy and decided this was worthwhile. And another thing, worthwhile bringing to the committee rather, and the committee agreed. Another thing that I suggested to the committee and the committee agreed with is that this is an opportunity for us to explain how to resign as a board member, because when I was chair, I had 2 or 3 different people come to me and say, hey, how do I resign? And I had no idea. And that, prior to my term, when Frank was chair, that happened as well. So it's like just laying out, here's how it works, because it's not complicated and it's easy. And now we have it in a policy. So anyone who's curious can look at it and see what they need to do. And it makes clear how are temporary replacements made? They're made by your towns. We don't do them, the towns do them. And it just puts that clear, puts it in a policy, so there's no questions about it.
Any questions? Oh, Mary.
I just wondered about the fourth line in there, because it said, without excuse for 3 consecutive meetings, and I'm wondering if it should be 3 consecutive board meetings, because there's a lot of meetings.
It includes workshops. So in our policy, BBBDA, it doesn't include committee meetings, but it includes other board meetings, special meetings, workshops, and regular meetings are included in
So it
that.
doesn't include, what did you say?
Committee meetings,
It doesn't include-
not necessarily in that context,
So
I
it's
believe.
just whole board meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was thinking like, for instance, like if you're gone a week,
You could admit,
you could, foreseeably.
but you'd also be
You have
excused.
excuse.
It's
You have
unexcused.
excuse. It's
So
just
if you're blowing off the board, that's
people
a
not
difference.
showing up.
Excuse, does it
Yeah.
say that on there?
Yeah,
Okay.
without excuse for 3 consecutive meetings. So the
If you go on
excuse,
vacation, you're
Okay,
fine.
all
It's
right.
just if you stop showing up and don't say where you are.
Okay, just checking on that.
no, it's a good question. That's a very good clarification. But yeah, and it's funny, actually, that is one area the committee changed this language a little bit, because the sample policy just like says when a director resigns or after a director is absent without excuse for 3 consecutive meetings. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. The board's got to vote to trigger that. Like, we have to say the board takes action. It's not just you missed 3 meetings and it instantly happens. So the sample policy was actually too intense.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. And now 6.9, to consider action to eliminate policies ACAA 2024, harassment and discrimination of students, and ACAB 2024, harassment and discrimination of employees.
So moved. This is a pretty straightforward one. Our 2020 policies have already been our active policies since January, whatever, 8th, 9th, as Amy laid out at the beginning of our meeting. This is cleanup. We did confirm with our legal counsel this was appropriate cleanup. They agreed. Get it off the books. We're not using it. It's just complicated. So it's gone. The policy committee will be looking at our remaining Title IX policies and probably recoding ACAA 2020 to just be ACAA and ACAB 2020 to ACAB. But the policy committee will discuss that. That's, on our agenda. We'll see where we land.
Okay.
I just want to make one comment, just so the record's clear about this. When the board implemented these policies in the fall in order to comply with the then in effect Biden administration Title IX regulations, we had written the 2020 version and the 2024 version, because of course we had both of them in effect due to the goings on in the courts at the time, so that if and when the 2024 regulations, which were implemented by these two policies that are proposed to be rescinded tonight or rescinded over the next two reads, however that works, we were ready to kind of like instantly snap back to our version of the policy that had always implemented the 2020 regulations. So at the point at which the 2024 regulations were vacated, which was, I believe, January 9th of this year, like sort of the way we had authored these sort of created that instant switch. So.
And I would say I was very appreciative of Kim's expertise to help make sure we authored them that way to streamline it, because that proved very helpful.
And it was already there when we had to revert back to it before we had time to clean it up.
Yeah.
So I appreciate both of you. Any other questions or comments?
I'll just say we vote once to rescind, so it will be tonight, Kim, that we.
And they'll be gone after tonight. All in favor? That's everyone unanimous. Thank you. Cleaned. All right, now 6.10. Pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056D to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing contract negotiations with the Merrymeeting Teachers Association.
So moved?
Moved and seconded. All in favor? That is unanimous. You guys want to take a break? Please do. Last one in, close the door. Wow.
I'll bring it to you.
Thin mints. That sounds good too. Yeah. What does he need? He doesn't even.
He's doing the financial.
We make let's move it up. The new agenda.
Is that in
By
the,
default.
when is that?
Amy, ahead of,
We're back in?
so, yeah, well, those are the committee meetings, is doing the report. We can go quick at it.
We're
You may
on
have- you may
seven,
have
we're at
three.
7.
Yeah, so he's 7.3.
That's the finance committee. Is that what he's doing?
Yes, with Ryan. There's
Oh, okay.
adjustments that need to be made.
Okay. All right, so we're on item 7, the board chair's report. Really quickly want to say I am enjoying using Onboard. I've been a little clunky. But now that we're taking the baby step of moving to Onboard, I would encourage committee chairs to consider moving to Onboard for your committee meetings. The policy committee has been using it. Works just as well. It even has a feature where it keeps you on track for time. You put in 90 minutes and it tells you where you should be on the agenda. So that's not required, but I'm putting it out there, Hudson.
What I would just add is that at present, I think that not all the committee chairs are able to create agendas. So we just might want to have a conversation, you mean Heidi, about how to create an agenda, then a chair can be added to then go from there. Very simple, but a little back channel we'll have, and then I think we can officially do exactly what you're saying.
Okay. One other thing I wanted to mention, there's all this media reports and whatnot about potential DOE funding going away. We do not have any information that of anything actually happening or what it would be, but Heidi and Evan have been putting together the details about what funding we get, what it covers, what we would have to cover with some of the programs like special ed are still going to be required. we'd have to come up with local funding for that. Some of the things it covers, we would just have to probably not do. It's some adult ed programs, summer programs. It's about $1.7 million a year. So just so everyone's aware of what we're talking about when we talk about loss of federal funding. And with that, that's the rest of my report. So we can move to the cooperative board meetings.
Thanks. And again, sort of following up on our workshop when Steve was here, I've passed along to Hudson the minutes. So embedded in onboard are the minutes from the January 27th meeting. So those are available in onboard, as is the agenda for the recently held February meeting. So from this point forward, I think it just makes sense, rather than hoping I touch all the bases, the minutes will appear and that will fall into the consent agenda posted. So if there are any questions, either now or follow up afterwards, please be in touch.
Fabulous. Anyone have any questions right now? Okay, we will move on to 7.3, the Finance Committee meeting.
Jim just raised the bar, so I'm not there yet, but we will be tracking you down soon. We've had 4 finance committees meetings since we last met. We've looked at special ed, capital maintenance, food service, adult ed, instruction and technology, facilities, transportation, and revenue and debt service. I have kind of the number shifts that we're looking at for each of those categories here. If we want to hear that, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of roll it up to the high level numbers for right now where we're at, knowing that much more is coming. Currently, our MOE is at up 5.4%. So that's the maintenance of effort budget. And that's if we just maintain current services and everything moving forward, what it looks like to maintain that. When we roll in the asks, which I would like to quickly say, I really appreciate the work Heidi did in working with her teams and preparing them. They were very thorough, thoughtful, and data-driven asks that they brought to us that really impacted the students. So there was a lot of thought and scrutiny that went into what has come forward so far. When we roll those asks in, the total budget right now is rolling up about 6.9%. So that's where things are looking now. That is not where we are going to land. It could be higher, it may be lower. Heidi is doing a lot of work now still to scrutinize that, where we have a target that's in the 4% range. We don't know that we'll end up there, but we're working towards that. And just really pleased with the work that everybody has done to this point to get it there. And especially looking at you, Evan, over there. So thank you very much for that. If you have questions, please let me know. Most of this information is either on the website, on the business office's page of the site, and then there is a bunch of information as well available on the shared drive, which if you don't have access to, let me know and we can get view access to anybody that may not have it that would like to review any of that. And I'm going to try to do what you did next time because I love it, Jim. And if we're good there, if there are any questions, no? All right, we're moving. Okay to move on?
Yep.
The next item that we want to talk about are a couple of adjustments. And Evan, if you can come up to kind of help walk us through this. But basically, there were a couple of behind the scenes bookkeeping adjustments that when we entered some information, we did not necessarily enter it appropriately, I think is probably the best word to use. And the way that we captured what was approved through the budgetary process was accurate, and we're just making a couple adjustments to ensure that they align appropriately, and Evan will walk you through that. And I think at the end of this, our ask would be that we probably take a vote to approve those adjustments. He's done a lot of work with the state to understand how we correct that piece and how it's noted, and we're kind of following that procedure.
Yeah, thank you. Is this on? Okay, I think it's on now. So I just want to be clear that, as you mentioned, everything that was voted on by this board and by the towns is correct. It's just some paper typos that happened along the way, particularly in fiscal year 2024, and then one issue in 2025. So everything that everyone voted on, the state has approved. It's just within that language that we submit to them, they found a couple errors that do need to be corrected. So the first one is in fiscal year 24, and I have these printouts, and after everyone votes on them, I can share them with you, but I also hope that to get signatures, what I've prepared are amendments to the texts, and that's what the state has asked for. This is something that was discovered in December when we were submitting our normal reports to the state, the Department of Education. They review all of our warrant articles just to make sure that everything lines up with what the town votes on and what we're submitting into their system so they can review, and they flag these for us. No action beyond just certifying the amendments is needed at this time, but they do want to see that clean paper trail for their records and for our records. So 2024 warrant article 14, this is the warrant article that speaks to debt service payments, and the wrong interest figure was used in the paragraph that describes what the voters are voting on. The total number, interest and principal, was the correct figure, but just the interest payment amount was not correct. We listed in that paragraph that it was $103,000 in interest, but it was in fact $162,000 in interest. So it all adds up appropriately, and I've put the amendment together. I can read it aloud if people find that to be helpful.
And I'll just quickly add to that, if people want to read it, we definitely can, but we did run this through the finance committee and heard everything and unanimously voted to support the approach Evan's taking and the wording he used, just for some perspective.
See. Does anyone want him to read it, or are you guys ready to?
Second.
Moved and seconded?
I can't hear.
Gregory?
And then I'll just say for the public out there, oh, sorry, you probably need to vote on that.
No, and then Holly seconded.
If anyone's listening out there, the other quick adjustment would be to fiscal year 2025, and that is we included the Orion's $20,000 that we allocated in warrant article 18. That is actually supposed to go in warrant article 12, so we put it in the right spot. Everything is good there. Just needs to be certified that we change the language.
So it's moved and seconded. All in favor? Unanimous. You might as well start over there and we'll just go around and sign it.
Holly.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay. Anything else, Brian?
That is all.
Okay, then we can move on to 7.4, the Orion Advisory Committee.
Yes, so this will be quick. I sent courtesy of Judith to Heidi and Nick to put in the new OPAC policy concerning like the mission statement, but it's also with the rental policy. And we had some suggestions by the lawyers to just clean up some language. So I'm hoping that that can be replaced. And interestingly enough, it's in board policy E. At the very bottom is the Orion policy. So, and the other part news is that last year we upgraded the sound system, and Judy was taking quotes about upgrading the lighting system. So the Orion continues to get upgraded with the district taking on her salary, that $20,000 that we just heard. That money now can be the money that we make with the Orion can now be used for upgrades, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Um, The February 5th Board Policy Committee report.
I will be fast. We have seen the results of that committee meeting already tonight. So no real anything to add other than the Title IX stuff continues as we discussed tonight already. So thank you very much.
Great. And 7.6, 7.7, 7.8 are all meetings that were canceled because of weather. And then so brings us to 7.9, the February 25th workshop with Aurora Laura. We did a lot of good work with a strategic plan. It was recorded in case anyone missed it and wants to listen to it, or you just thought it was great and you want to relive it. That process is going. I think it's scheduled to end in April.
April, yeah.
Yep. So we look forward to seeing the next round. We had a workshop today on AI. You were all there. And that brings us to the superintendent's report.
Yeah, awesome. We're here.
CIA.
Oh,
Wow.
CIA.
Man, I am
It's underneath.
710 CIA committee.
In the CIA committee today, there were four pieces that we saw. There was the addition of a kinesiology exercise science training for fitness and sport embedded within health and PA, which in fact is a extension of what's already being done in 11th and 12th grade. This is an effort to bring it into a 9th, 10th, but it also has a dual registration along with not St. Joseph's.
Yeah.
St. Joseph.
Yep.
So again, continuing that dual registration. AP Spanish language and culture was proposed. There is, we heard of the depth of the bench in language teachers that we have. So staff is in place to do that. There's been conversation with students already that are looking forward to participating in that. Intro to culture, again, an extension and a slight change in a course to meet a language requirement, but students to engage with culture through film. Again, teachers in place to work on it, as well as something that's been done at a higher grade level. This would be for entering ninth graders. We did not have a complete proposed course, but there was conversation around foundations in social studies, a change to work more, to continue work towards integrating students in with IEPs, engaged in special education, in a deeper social studies experience than they had been receiving in the course that they were taking now. But that ongoing effort to make sure that differences are recognized, not isolated, with opportunities both to learn and to demonstrate their learning in diverse ways. The committee did give a thumbs up to the 3 courses that were proposed. There were the only budget impacts at the AP Spanish may have text, some minimal text. There is online course materials from the AP. The teacher is already prepared, has gone through the workshop to be able to teach the class, but no significant budgetary implications. But the 3 courses are kinesiology, exercise science, AP Spanish language and culture, and intro to culture explorations and global cultures. So I would move that approval be given for those 3 courses to move forward at the high school.
Seconded. Hudson.
Am I correct in thinking that at some point you'll look at textbooks for those things for approvals per usual channels or course materials separately?
Yes, there was nothing specific at this point, but those will come to us.
Cool.
All in favor? It's unanimous, thank you. Sorry, I tried to skip you. Now it's the superintendent's report.
Oh. All right, we have a few resignations and retirements. Lana Anagnostics, who is a grade 1 teacher at Woodside Elementary School, she is retiring this year. And Lana shared in her notice that she was happy to share my son Matt. And Lana, the same, right back at you, anytime. Jessica DeBurge, grade 5 teacher at Bowdoin Central School. She is also retiring. Actually, it's a resignation, not a retirement. Sorry about that. Dorothy Bradford, district-wide multilingual teacher. She is retiring. And then Caitlin DeRozier, a paraprofessional from Harpswell Community School, resignation. Jason Knight, a middle school teacher, is also resigning. So those are resignations and retirements, and I wish them all very well and thank them for their service here at MSAD 75. I have a couple quick notes that I wanted to just kind of plant a seed about. I will be talking more about this at the Finance Committee meetings, but we have signed on to do what they call Cohort 2, which is bringing our child development services into the responsibility of the district, and that is for preschool age children from 3 to 5 years old. It's a great partnership where that all preschool children with special needs will receive the necessary services that they need to thrive, and then provide them with a stronger foundation. And we get our hands and eyes on them, not literally their hands on, but we get them before they enter kindergarten, and hopefully we'll be able to do a lot of work with them. This program is 100% funded at this point by the Department of Education, and we will have continual meetings on that coming up over the next several months. That, in combination with our hope for increasing our pre-K, I see that as a really bright future for enrollment for the district. The only other thing that I wanted to kind of mention is at the start of next year and throughout this year, at the remainder of this year, we'll be sending information more about